All right, everyone, welcome to the 2024 Kelsay Books Zoom reading. We are so excited to have so many wonderful poets with us today. Our first featured reader is Rosemary Bum, who will read, followed by Anthony DiMatteo and Mary Kay O'Melveny. Rosemary Bum is a German-born British national who lives and writes in Lima, Peru. She is the author of 2 novels as well as 8 poetry collections, including Life Stuff from Kelsay Books in 2023. Her poems have been published widely in mostly U.S. poetry reviews, online, and in print. She is a Pushcart and Best of the Net nominee. Her website is rosemaryBumPoet.com.
Thank you very much. And I was told that we have to have our book ready to show off. And here is mine, Live Stuff. And here I go. Embers. I just wanted to say that I'm 86 years old. And therefore, in this book, Live Stuff, I looked back over my life and there were many memories that became poems. Embers. I live in the embers of fires that once were fierce. White, gold, red, amber conflagration. Youth needs must, no prisoners, no forethought, no consequences considered. Torching what came near enough. And the iceman, a chimera, whispered about by shivering old women. No longer strong enough to hold the flames. I have felt his breath in the shadows. Last night, he held my hand, sightless and unforgiving. I always loved you, life. You have showered me in riches. You have hurt me beyond measure. But I'm getting tired now. I started the battle early, and the warrior woman's arm is lowering her bow. I wore a coat of many colors, became what the world wanted me to be, claimed my freedom by melting into walls. Sometimes you could see the fissures. I did what I needed to do in the anonymity of plain sight. I lusted after the steps of my mother's forebears, my long mane blowing in the wind. My DNA remembered that I honored the goddess, cared for the land, heard it, and told the stories of old. Didn't know what it means to belong, but I always was a quick learner, my deceit well practiced. You never quite found me out as not one of your pack. Now this following poem, some of you have heard before, but I wrote it for my mother, and every time I read it, I have a feeling she actually listens to it, so I can't pass it by. I didn't. My brother said, don't come. I didn't fly out to see her one last time. My brother said, she doesn't know who I am. I figured she wouldn't know who I am either. I had never been near the deaths of my loved ones. I think I avoided the grief. I had lost them already, or so I thought, or so I hoped. I had just picked up my children from school. My brother called. She's gone. I could hear his utter disbelief, his voice choking in watering flame. And suddenly I felt empty, abandoned, a forlorn child in a big world, a woman without substance, homeless. And suddenly my losses multiplied, and all the tears I had never shed filled a salty ocean of grief and guilt. And suddenly I was there with her, wrestling with her demons. I wondered whether I would have recognized her. My father had been a dark blue life-size remake in a life-size box, vaguely reminding me of the man who held open his arms when I came flying. 3 days to dying, 3 days of longing, 3 days of holding on. Perhaps, but I didn't. I didn't fly out to see her one last time, leave everything and hurry to see her and let her touch me one last time, let her know I cared enough to tell her one more time, I love you, Mom. Tell her one more time, I'm strong because you made me so. Thank her one more time for giving me her life. Invisible arms around my neck. Never really got to know you because you left too early. Never saw you except with my heart's eyes. Still, I loved you as I did the others. And ever since I began to bleed, you've been with me in my heart, in my flesh. I will always think of you as my second child. And the last one, my brother. It's not easy to be 16 with a kid sister of 8. You get shtick for that from your friends, especially if you love her enough to make her kites and things and teach her to skate on Rattenberger's frozen pond. Later I came from wherever I could, by plane, helicopter, train, by Fiat Cinquecento crawling up from Munich for 800 kilometers, or passing the border between Holland and Germany, with my vicious cat firmly locked into its traveling basket. Long walks, long beers, restaurants, bars, and cafes all over the once thriving harbor, now a fashionable haven for those of us who had the time. The Holocaust Monument, the bike lanes, windy terraces, his tall, slightly bent frame, walking with steps that made me feel small again. We sat at the canoe club in a weak sun, our collars up against an imaginary wind. Kids at the mini pier, laughing and mucking about. He told me then, and there rose a silence between us. We slowly finished our beers. I still visit. They packed his ashes with earth and seedlings. He is growing into a tall and slender birch, fresh young branches reaching for the sky. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. That was very beautiful. Our next reader is Anthony DiMatteo.
Hi. How are you? Okay. I had the good fortune of having 2 books published with Kelsay, so I want to thank Jenna and Julie, and I don't see Shay, but Karen too, of course. The first book was Fishing for Family, beautiful glass sculpture by Christina Bothwell, who's a fantastic artist. And basically the book is about the experience we have of language from infancy to senescence. Thankfully, I'm not quite in the last stage of life, but okay. And I'm going to read the title poem, which is a prosy metrum poem. I don't write too many, but I think I'll write some more, like Haben. Okay, so the name of the poem is Fishing for Family is the title. I wake to find my brother has a pike on the line, too big to reel in early one morning. We're at large in the Smokies, a whole day free to roam. High for me, low for him. He stays lakeside. I hike up to Mount Shuckstack and climb a shaky fire tower. A brown hawk rips by. Two women roll in and pee, too late for me to call down. Then three sweaty dudes show up. One drops into the cool grass right where one woman peed. I left so hard Gatorade chuffs out of my nose and am discovered 60 feet up the tower. Guess we weren't alone, she says. I wait till they all leave, saving us from mutual embarrassment. The silence I had been sharing with the hawk floods back. Anything can show on the AT. It turns strangers soulmate to soulmate strangers, round any bend, flowers, toads, crow, or hobo, but mostly the deep peace of the woods. Hours later, I find my brother wearing snakeskins. He had long since set a pike free and gone for a cold swim to an island where he thought he heard a bear. When I told him I'd seen two women pee, he knows I'm not lying. Why say two when one will do? Sure gonna pull your pike on that one tonight, he ribs me. The way out the next day, I hear a bird hiss. Am I near a nest? I look up, nothing. I look down, 5-foot rattler, head raised, spitting at my knee. I freeze, then slowly back out the strike zone. I warn my brother trailing behind. He doesn't believe me, but then sees with his own eyes. Holy fuck, he yells. I reply, yay, and let dust be its food. He looks for a rock. I ask, why? It was returning to the green silence of the cool glade. We stand amazed. Possibilities swirl, stars in a stream. Often we flat out don't see or see only what we believe we can see. Then someone leaves. The light changes. What if the snake had bit me 8 miles out from the car? What if there had been 6 women and I fell or was thrown from the tower? What if my brother got lost or drowned and I found the pike cold on the grill or had been lost to the bear? Enough happens in the woods, even when nothing does. But the backdrop of silence against which we hear a waterfall or our own footfall is an ocean or night immense with stars. The annihilation that is death feels closest in the woods. We see nothing human there to distract us from who we are. But now, many years later, that feeling is everywhere. My brother was murdered by 3 thieves who broke into his house and stabbed him with his own kitchen knife, as if they had mistaken him for a fish whose life they had the right to take. Since then, my faith more often than not has failed me. I can't see which side of the fence wilderness is on, and I wonder about the kindness of the kin we call mankind. Can you not hear in any room, much less a forest or the sky, how quiet things are without us? So that's Fishing for Family. So thank you. And then the 2023 book, Secret Offices. That's a wonderful photograph by Mish Aminoff, who's a wonderful photographer, and it's attractive cover. I like the subject of object kind of interchange between the looker and the painting. Here's another narrative poem, and this is about my move from Long Island to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The name of the poem is Reciting. She looks at me strange when I yell out, Mazel Tov! You all right there? She shouts back, thinking a shard of glass has struck me. I'm fine. It feels like something to celebrate when a bottle smashes. Oh, okay. I thought you said my eyes popped. No, Mazel Tov, Jewish phrase for good luck. The look on her face tells me she's puzzled, never having heard the expression or wondering why I'd say it, breaking bottles or both. We are at the Recycle Center, alone in the dead heat of August. I'm a transplant from New York. She's a native of the Outer Banks. Yep, lived there all my life, she tells me, squeezing hard on her trash picker. I picked up all kinds of stuff that got no place in our bins, from diapers to a bucket of dead fish. Well now, you've picked up a new phrase that deserves recycling, I tell her, with a laugh. Oh, that's right, my old stuff. Isn't that what you said? Close enough, and good luck to you. Oh, to you too. And I have one more, the lyric poem called The One Truth. The One Truth. I was in Nevada, and the road was moving under me. Or was I on the road in Montana as mountains sway? The wind rose, and the night stumbled into the woods. You were on my mind, the way I had been on the road. I was along my way trackless before you appeared. I could not pass beyond your trace. What use to look to bluffs of Wyoming, those pinnacles of sand, where an open field let yellow flowers wander for miles. I found one of your thrilling routes under stars and no speed limit. I watched mountains rise up as if wearing the breath of God, and three rivers converge in a wild concourse of silver, headstrong for a distant sea. I beheld the moon right above blackened valleys, and it wore your face, mocking my quest. In the far sweep of your current, I turned into a stream, seeking where I ended and you began. The waters proved to merge. But the dimmer the woods, the darker the night, the more the one truth remains clear. I will return to you, the one truth. Okay, thank you for listening, and I look forward to more poems. And Rose, those were really fine poems. And okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Mary is reading next.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I have two books with Kelsay Press. The first is Dispatches from the Memory Care Museum, which was published in 2021. And today I'm going to be reading from Flight Patterns, which was published last summer by Kelsay Press. And I'm really delighted to be here. The first poem is called A Monarch Butterfly Poses Some Questions. Do you remember the noise of my wings? A lace veil as it flirts like a summer breeze. A blade of grass as it shakes off morning dew. In Mexico, a million of us sound like waterfalls. At rest, we cling to tree limbs like gold, onyx, ivory jewelry that has been hidden from thieves. We fly high above sleeping migrants everywhere, whose hopes pirouette in zephyrs and exospheres as they dream of flight patterns to safety. Do you recall the first time you saw one of us? How you were awed by our delicate wings, how we landed like a first kiss on a purple coneflower, how you imagined what it would be like to float unfettered, without apology, without accountability, how it takes so little to ignite imagination's fiery call. Our journeys from your garden to jungle sanctuaries span generations. Some days, the ground is littered with scales that resemble coins from Spanish galleons. I have been airborne for 2,500 miles. I have traversed obstacles my ancestors never knew. Poisoned fields, droughts, drones and plains, wildfires, clear-cut forests. Still, think of that moment of lift when air currents lick your skin as a lover might. Always optimists, we remain your ardent guides to Elysian field. The next poem is called To Be Blessed. To be blessed, I always thought, was like being able to walk on water, a miracle of positive thinking. Everyone around you sinks, arms and legs thrashing like cymbals, while you still hear the sun's orchestral chords. To be blessed, on the other hand, was what the sales clerk said about the day she urged you to have after she wrapped your holiday gift and tied its bow. To be blessed was to have your best friend of 45 years remember your name again as you walk with her through once lovingly planted lush gardens. I can still see her lavender and lupine, laurel and lobelia. I shade my eyes against the shine of orange koi darting past lotus blossoms. To be blessed is to see two eagles nesting in a treetop as I drive home from running errands, amidst radio chatter about terrifying times to come. To be blessed is to listen to Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, and sketches of Spain as calm and cool as neon moss against my cheek. To be blessed is knowing that even the fierce rage that fills my body like fire climbing walls might be tamped down if I took a walk in my woods, past our stream and its little waterfall. As my boots kick leaves away, I head for the pond where walking on water seems possible, even flying. And the next poem is called What is a Dream After All? What is a dream after all? Maybe it's a bird soaring south over checkered corn, lime green grasses, silken wheat, riding wind columns like a hobo on the rails. Or is a dream a voice that coaxes us toward safety or escape, or a long walk through a desert, clutching a rosary and a half-empty stale bottle of water? Maybe a dream can walk out of a convenience store, light up a new cigarette, joke with friends, drive home listening to Ain't Nobody's Business. Maybe a dream is louder than we think. Maybe it could wake up a crowd. Imagine how a dream might swim across a river and emerge clean, rested, and whole on the other side, safe in a parent's arms, ready for a new life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was very beautiful. Our next featured poet is Jim Landwehr, who will read, followed by David Anthony Sam and Carolyn Light Bell. Jim Landwehr has 6 poetry collections: Tea in the Pacific Northwest, Thoughts from a Line at the DMV, Genetically Speaking, On a Road, Reciting from Memory, and Written Life. Jim also has 4 published memoirs: At the Lake, Cretin Boy, Dirty Shirt, and The Portland House. He is retired and lives with his wife in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Jenna. As Jenna said, I have 2 books with Kelsay. The first one being Thoughts from a Line at the DMV, which I thought was a clever title until my sister reminded me that she worked for the DMV for 30 years. But the other book is titled Tea in the Pacific Northwest, and you probably can't see the cover, but both of these covers were done by a gentleman from Minnesota that moved out to California. He's an artist, but also a prolific writer, and Kelsay just did a great job with all of it, and I just want to thank them again. But this first poem is from Tea in the Pacific Northwest. It's called Sadness. She carried her sadness in a flamingo print bag, hanging like a gallows of sorrow from her delicate shoulder. Inside the bag, the sadness lay between the chapstick and the false promises of her pocketbook, home to 4 lonely dollar bills folded morosely against one another, doing their best to cheer her, but ultimately only serving to worsen her condition. If things didn't get rosier soon, she would need a bigger satchel, perhaps an upgrade to an albatross sack with enough room for a lifetime of grief. Friends told her she should dump her sadness into the Susquehanna River, but she wasn't sure she was ready to let go of it altogether. She liked to take it out once in a while and wear it like a burqa of distress, revealing only her mournful eyes, because without her sadness, she might be tempted to savor joy, happiness, and contentment. So she kept it nestled in the bag she carried to use on occasion like a flamethrower of hopelessness. So that's sadness. This next one is titled Monochromatic. It's about my sister who died at 5 years old. Monochromatic. She stares back at me, though I am not there and she is not here. Third in a line of 7, she was intended for a lifetime, but didn't make it 5 years. I know she happened. The evidence is irrefutable. It's all in black and white. She seemed like a happy kid, smiling big most times in her little girl dresses. There she is lakeside, a shop by the Christmas tree, another blowing out candles. Then the saddest of all, in a hospital gown, clutching a toy dog. Like a beautiful shadow of all the rest of us, she gives us these glimpses. This sister I never knew, unlike the rest of us, remains forever young in pictures. So there's a little happiness, a little sadness, and a little humor in my books. This next one is called, where the book gets its title, called Tea in the Pacific Northwest. I had tea with a Sasquatch yesterday, having come across him during a hike in the cold drizzle of the Pacific Northwest. His hut was deep in the woods, far from trail. He took me there because he said I looked cold. His English was better than most of my friends. The tea was a mix of pine needles, moss, and turnip peelings. Claims he'd stolen the turnips from a garden in town. Said he wasn't proud of it, but what's a tea-loving Bigfoot to do? I asked him why he and his kind were so elusive. He said it used to be the fear of being shot at, but now it was more a hatred of all the political bickering. In the corner was a tattered copy of Slaughterhouse-Five. He asked if the firestorming of Dresden really happened. When I said yes, I think his eyes watered up a little. When it came time to leave, I invited him to my house. He laughed and laughed, shaking his sagittally crested head. Why leave his simple life for the stress of the city? He made me promise not to tell anyone we'd met. After all, his reputation of being hard to find was on the line. So I'll leave it to you to decide if it ever happened. Open-ended book. This one is called, it's in kind of reverence to Richard Brautigan, who was one of my favorite poets. It's called Trout Fishing in the Driftless Area. The man who never claimed to be a trout fisherman tried his luck just to see if maybe he could talk a brookie into falling for his ruse. He'd heard amazing stories about trout fishing in the driftless region, tales of trout the size of wildebeests, and as numerous as Subarus at a farmer's market. So he took a rod and reel that never claimed to be for trout fishing and clomped down to the stream. He arrived just in time for the black fly rally streamside. They buzzed around his meaty head, wearing tiny black leather jackets. He moved down the stream, casting and swatting until he felt the tug of a trout so bored, even a feathered spinner with hooks looked interesting enough to risk its life over. Besides, it was lunchtime. And for just a few moments, the man who never claimed to be a trout fisherman was one. So I love to fish, and I caught a few trout in my day, and that's kind of the top of the food chain for fishing in my respect, in my eyes. This next one is called Rule Breakers, and it's kind of a tribute to the artists and the creators of the world. It was the eccentric ones, those that rode outside the lines and broke most of the conventional rules. They took literature, poetry, and art, beat it out of submission with their pens and brushes, gave it to their readers and critics, and told them to love it or leave it, proclaiming, "It's me, it's who I am, it's my art." So it is with reverence when I speak of Brautigan, Kerouac, and Dali, Hunter S. Thompson, Ginsberg, and Picasso, the thinkers, the madman, and the drinkers, who created a new paradigm for me, a fledgling writer, unafraid to push the boundaries of chapter, stanza, and verse, to knock around the rules taught in school and let them know that's not who I am. They're not the boss of me. I'm the writer, the author, the poet, and they are just the words awaiting rescue from the stifling restrictions of rules made by uptight men and women of yesterday. That's Rule Breakers. This next one is actually a true story. It's called Funeral Wish. At my funeral, I want you to put on Jay Giles Band vinyl 33 RPM, blow your face out, and dance until you're sweated through. Because when it comes right down to it, life ain't nothing but a house party. That's my dying request. And if instead you play on Eagle's Wings, I will rise from the casket and smash that record like the woman in It's a Wonderful Life. Because I don't want to be raised up like a raptor. I want to cut a rug until I hurt. Which is true. Funerals are weird things, and mine, I just want people to have fun and, maybe toast me. I don't know. And this last one is, I moved to Wisconsin from Minnesota in 1986, and both are on Great Lakes. This is called Superior Sister. As a Minnesota boy growing up, all I knew was Superior, with its cold, unforgiving depths and the lure of its shipwreck song. To me, it seemed like an endless sea with an unknowable distant shore. There could not be anything like it, or so I thought, until I met her little sister, Michigan, after a move to Milwaukee in the 80s. She was equally impressive, not inferior to Superior, slightly better behaved, but still capable of taking ships for her own songs. She has a warmth not known to Superior, and while not as deep, she is still not shallow. As the middle child in a family of greats, she is approachable, but still demands respect. She is more Suzanne Vega than Lady Gaga. She is the girl next door, but don't mess with her. She is our superior sister. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jim, for that. As someone put it in the chat, the humor and the sadness, those were incredible. All right, so next we have David Anthony Sam.
Hello.
Hello.
These first two poems are from my book, Dark Fathers, and the third one is from the book will be coming out next year from Kelsay Books, Geographies of the Dead. Genetic memory. My saliva contains much memory that Ancestry.com has parsed into strains of history, of parents and grandparents and distant more, mixing fluids with lust and dreams, depending me from a tree that grows from peasant roots, watered with time. Tribes and farmers worked flesh and soil in continents of passing years and lives. Tsars and Nazis, Ottomans and Caesars conquered with rapine and sword and left their mark in helixes that are more eternal than any form they take in flesh or memory. An ocean of difference traveled for in stinking holds, dividing me from certain knowledge of the names I would evoke, but rest in silence. I wear a mix of nomenclatures, the way the English dictionary is made of broken tongues, reknitted in mongrel tapestry. My paternal grandmother's surname is the first that I was called. It carries the remains of alleles fractured by an ocean, written with blood and hunger. I am a memory of tending horses, namesake of shepherd, grandson of peasant peddlers, a Sam's son elevated beyond dry olive fields. And so I grow a speculative tree with brittle leaves and spittle speaking genealogy, fractured by an ocean, writing memory in my flesh as water writes in sand. Next is Navigation by Dream, about early memory of mine with my father. His large hand encompassed my small, his hand hard mine soft as youth. We walked a dream, a forested ridge, watched by a fragile yearling contained by mist. He gathered wild onion and wild carrot for stew. He browned the beef in a bubbling of butter, then cooked in a blackened pot I stirred with expectation. We sat above the covered bridge, above the muddy river, and ate from flat aluminum plates with stainless steel spoons. He pointed to the Milky Way and the Bear and Polaris and said this was the guiding light he hadn't found in church, the way he navigated, the way his father had not found. He never showed me the photo of his dark father, dead 10 years. Instead, he held my hand as we stumbled down the slag heap that smoked beside the river, that smolders still in dream. And the last poem is How the Dead Are Heard. I thought I heard the dead speaking. It might just have been the wind as it rose above that hill and dipped down among these trees. Winds often talk to me in ways that I cannot guess, but understand. But then the wind died down, and I still heard the dead in their simple, eloquent silence, wordless but clear in their meaning. Yes, it was the dead that spoke after all. Now I saw them in their eroded graves, beneath their eroded markers. I stopped my striding, stood still, because stillness was the only way to answer so that the dead might comprehend. I don't pray, and so I didn't pray here either. No words could answer what the dead were asking or saying or being here after the decades, the centuries. I didn't feel fear or surprise, but just the certainty that they spoke. And not that they spoke to me either. The dead speak to no one, not even each other, not even to the wind that suddenly picked up again, vibrating the aspen leaves rustling in their yellow significance. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, David. We really look forward to publishing your forthcoming book. And now we are ready for Carolyn.
Are you looking for me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Are you ready? Okay, so this is a collection of poems called the Joshua Poems. And I don't know what you can see. Am I in complete screen with you? Good. Okay, so I took that photograph of Joshua as he was surfing off the coast of California. The Joshua poems were written as a tribute to Joshua, who took his own life as a result of addiction and mental illness. He was the youngest of our three children. And I started writing poems about him when he was quite young, early in his life, actually. And the purpose of writing this collection of poems was to comfort those who have suffered loss, as most of us have. This is an unusual kind of loss. Suicide is one that is very different. The first poem I will read is from the first section of poems called No Longer. The second section is called Prescience. The third is Step by Step, as I learned how to navigate his death. And the fourth section is called Forced to Swim. This poem is called So Much for Detachment. I haven't always been there for you. Other mothers sprang from sidewalks just in time to ride an almost fallen bike or serve as Solomon in squabbles over toys. Once a crowd of neighbors had to saw your spokes apart to free your foot. When I arrived, they hovered round like hired mourners, tisking tongues. But this time, I was right behind you when you fell, a blur and then a small blue heap, motionless, eyes slammed shut, blood raisins in your nose. I couldn't get my skis off fast enough. Wake, little one. Wake up. Don't let the snow god get you. What? Me call the ski patrol? I have to stay here pressed to the icy ground, watching you breathe. Here they come. 3 stooges in slow brown clown suits and yellow crosses, arguing technique of rescue. Hell, I can move faster than that. Your eyes fluttered, fixed on me. We bumped down slopes, coarse blanket flapping on your face, a shroud. Doctors fought like fools to claim you. Now you lie with broken thumbs and a concussion, hooked to monitors. I pause at each quick breath, my own pulse riding the rise and fall of your sheets. You dream of trees and jungle damp swinging from limb to limb. You wrap your thumbs around vines in perfect brachiation while I sit frozen in the shadows, rooted to your white bed. Your healing will be faster than mine. That was for the first section, which was written when he was very small and imitated everything his brother did, which was to do something called what was it called? They did kind of skiing where you are risking your life every moment. And he did it so well that he competed nationally in the Junior Olympics. So this next poem is a poem I wrote after I had seen a documentary after Josh was gone. And this documentary was about Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu. And it occurred to me that as I watched them, they were so completely at home with their own emotions. And they were able to appreciate one another and pat one another on their arms and faces and kiss one another, and they were completely unabashed. And I read this poem at every reading. It's called Never Apologize. Don't cover your face when you're crying. Who shamed us to fear our most natural feelings? Instead of shunning, embrace. Sadness and gladness, laughter and tears, spring hard and spring soft, welling up from the same source God gave us to feel. The Dalai Lama in saffron, Archbishop Tutu in pink, stroked arms as old pals unabashed. First giggling, next weeping. Like babies, like old men, no one said to them, stop. Honest love hides neither sun rays nor rain. So neither should you. No, neither should you. For the natural music of laughter or tears, apologize? Never. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That was a reminder for all of us that we can not be afraid of our emotions. Okay, our third featured poet is Sarah Russell, who will read, followed by John W. Bing and Claire Drucker. Sarah Russell's poetry is published in Rattle, Misfit Magazine, Third Wednesday, Poetry Breakfast, and many other journals and anthologies. She is a Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee. She has 2 poetry collections published by Kelsay Books, Today and Other Seasons and I Lost Summer Somewhere, which has sold almost 2,000 copies. A third collection titled Emergence will be published in 2025. She blogs at sarahrussellpoetry.net.
Thank you, Jenna, and thank you to the whole staff at Kelsay. You've been awfully good to me. The first book that I'll feature is called Today and Other Seasons. There it is. I'm in a skylight, so I keep moving, trying to escape it. These poems are all about the seasons, and I've picked 4 about birds, since I am a real bird lover. First is called Nesting. The finches are courting outside our window, a warbled discussion of real estate and love. Like last year and the year before, they want to lease the flower wreath on our front door. It's always a dilemma. Discourage their rapture or detour through the garage. The finches always win. So for a month, we'll wake to overtures at dawn, so cheerful, so loud. Show pictures of pin-feathered babies to friends, recall demands and pleasures of our own brood, the bittersweet fledging. Starlings. There's a sash of clouds slung low along the ridge, and a blur of rain in the valley. An abacus of starlings perch on the telephone lines, adding and subtracting. Suddenly they lift, a single peppered swirl dipping left, then right, as wings astound the sky. And the third one is a winter hawk. Silent sentry in a ravaged tree, his fields, once tall with corn, now snow-tipped stubble. He accepts the unforgiving wind, the cold, thin light, not wishing for tomorrow or warmth or spring, alive only in what is. Suddenly he rises on fierce, decisive wings, his crimson tail as brilliant in the January sky as truth. And this book is called I Lost Summer Somewhere, and this is the book that has sold so many copies, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I get to the poem. This is the story of a woman's life from her childhood to her last wishes. Leaving West Virginia. The road curls snug against the hills, dips into hollows, rises up through stands of oak rough against dun clouds that promise snow. Old Jimmy waves goodbye, and Maud is backlit in the door. Homesick starts here on this gravel road, I guess, nuzzling deep in sun-sweet quilts. An owl keeping himself company at midnight, clanking the old stove to life come morning. The world is raw, waiting where the road goes flat and blurs in a rush to get somewhere. I watched for dawn this morning, breathless to be gone. Now I want to salt away this place the way it is, the way I was. Denouement. The movers are here this morning. Only things with yellow post-its, I tell them. I find my long lost earring behind the couch. Probably landed there that night. We couldn't wait to get upstairs. I put it in my pocket. Wonder if I kept the other one. I divide the sterling service for 8 into 2 sets of 4. Solomon's solution of no use to either of us for dinner parties. Outside, the garden needs tending. Stalks of gray and brown, withered blossoms in a winter without snow. I reach for the pruners, then put them back. The roses are his now. Tonight I fix a curry with stuff from the fridge and we make small talk. My new job, his vacation. Afterwards, we clean up in choreography perfected through 20 years of meals together. I feign tiredness and ask if he'll be around tomorrow before I leave. No, there's an early meeting, he says, and turns back to TV. In the guest room, the sheets smell stale. The old cat comes and curls into the crook of my knees. An exquisite kindness. And one more bird poem, I'm sorry. It's called A Gospel of Birds. She wasn't sure about heaven, but she believed in birds. On walks, she'd stop to watch a skein of geese, wondered where they came from, where they were heading. They mate for life, she'd say. Crows do too, and swans and storks. She must have said that 100 times with a kind of wonder at the impossibility. She kept 5 feeders on the deck, had a book of backyard birds to identify newcomers at the feast. She cried when a neighbor's cat killed a mourning dove. They mate for life too, she said. Listen, her mate is sad. That's just their call, I told her. No, it's different, she said. You can tell when birds are sad. She died a month ago. I keep the feeders filled. And finally, the reason that this book sold so many copies, I had a poem go viral. I wish that for every one of you. It took on a life of its own. It was translated into at least 3 languages that I know of. It has gone all over the world, and it's truly a blessing. And it's called If I Had 3 Lives, after Melbourne by the Whitlams. If I had 3 lives, I'd marry you in 2. The other? Perhaps that life over there at Starbucks, sitting alone, writing. A memoir, maybe a novel, or this poem. No kids, probably. A small apartment with a view of the river and books, lots of books, and time to read. Friends to laugh with, and a man sometimes for a weekend to remember what skin feels like when it's alive. I'd be thinner in that life, vegan, practice yoga. I'd go to art films, farmers markets, drink martinis in swingy skirts and big jewelry. I'd vacation on the Maine coast and wear a flannel shirt weekend guy left behind, loving the smell of sweat and aftershave more than I did him. I'd walk the beach at sunrise, find perfect shell spirals, and study pockmarks water makes them sand. And I'd wonder sometimes if I'd ever find you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Sarah. That was amazing. And now I see John is ready to read.
Yep. This comes from my book, Time Signatures, which was kindly published by Kelsay. And it has a number of sections. It's kind of an autobiography in poetry. And one of the sections is called Afghan Time because I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Afghanistan when it was a peaceful 12th century kingdom, a long time ago, as you can imagine. And the first poem I'm going to read is called The Water Carrier. Ghazni, Afghanistan, winter of 1966. At the door, an old man with a dirt gray turban and a blanket wrapped around his body carried a sheep bladder filled with water over his shoulder into the dark, mud-walled house to fill a basin. Then, given a few small coins, departed somewhere to fill again his burden. I sat with new friends in full winter, eating dry fruits on a low-covered table, while underneath a bukhara with hot embers kept the cold at bay. Later, one of them brought me to a tea house, and we sat for hours as a waiter filled our pot of tea from copper samovars, our first cups sugared. I tasted sweetness fade to bitter at the last cup. Then I leaned back and saw the beauty of the cold Hindu Kush, the long reach of mountain streams, and smelled soot in the air from 1,000 fires. In memory, Ghazni will lie always in that winter, when pomegranates from the bazaar froze solid and an earthquake turned the hotel chandelier into a long pendulum, swinging between my past and my future. If I had known what was to come, I could not have done differently. Once a pack of dogs followed me until, backed against a mud wall, I threw an imaginary stone as I do now. The dogs fled. That's the first two of my two Afghan poems. The second one is in memoriam to a dear Afghan friend and my teacher of Dari named Mohammad Ehsan Entezar, called The Wind and the Dust. And I wrote it after attending his funeral. The day is hot and a dry wind blows. I stand with many men in 3 lines facing the bier. The mullah's cloak flutters in the wind. After instructions, we stand together in silent prayer. The men make a bowl with their hands. Then the body of my old friend is carried by the men to the deep grave. The mullah asks for 3 men from the family to descend to the grave to receive the body. Dust blows in the hot wind around the grave. 3 men drop into the opening. The mullah instructs them to receive the body, how to lay the body down facing Kaaba. The men lift the body wrapped in a white kaftan from the bier, gently place it in the proper position. They are pulled out. The mullah and one of the family speak surahs from the Quran. The mullah turns to us and says, "There is a grave for each of us. It awaits us." He instructs the 3 to throw dust into the grave. They beckon me to follow, and I take a handful of dust and throw it to my friend. The wind throws it back to me. The third poem I'm going to read, it comes from the same book, and it reflects poetry that I've written since moving to New Mexico. It's called Juniper Bush. And there is a juniper bush right outside this window here, my office. This one juniper bush, rooted solitary in the desert, home to a flock of bluebirds last week, now swings its limbs excitedly in the whirling desert gusts, like Vishnu as Bernstein, conducting the wild symphony of the winds. And the last poem I'm going to read is a more recent one. I have written a series of poems which all begin, "The old man looked out of his window and saw." So he's my alter ego. And he has a better imagination than I do, so he's very helpful to me. It's called The Immigrant Invasion, a sonnet. And out in this part of the world, immigration is a big deal, as it is everywhere, I guess. The old man looked out of his window and saw a large group of migrants walking across the desert towards his house. "Oh my, I'm glad we have walls around this house," he thought. But they came through the gate chanting "Agua es vida." So he took a bucket of water and many cups to the table under the portal, and then brought all the crackers and food he could find. After they had satisfied themselves, they took from their backpacks different instruments and began to play music that soothed the old man's pains. After a few tunes, they packed up their instruments and left through the opposite archway, leaving the old man glad of the day. And so that's all. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. And now we'll hear from Claire Drucker.
Hi, thanks so much, everybody. Beautiful poems. So Kelsay Books published, can you see it? The Life You Gave Me. I know it's a little weird with the background, but that's a photo of my mother right here in the right, and in the background is a photo of my grandmother and my grandfather. And I just wanted to say I'm very grateful to Kelsay for publishing this collection last October. And the first poem I'll read is called "If Discrimination Suddenly Became Extinct." If discrimination suddenly became extinct, children would leap out of detention camps and into the arms of their mothers, who are now stakeholders in all of the Fortune 500s. The single mother on welfare would kneel on the floor in disbelief with a check big enough to buy a house in Marin for all the work she lost from staying home with her children. The young girl in a wheelchair would roll herself over every beach boardwalk, laughing, her hair flying back, and chocolate ice cream at the corners of her mouth. Dinosaurs that had been in hiding would walk up the hills of small towns in Mississippi and bend down to comfort the trans ones, who are now free to be you and me, partying in the streets, screaming and crying with joy. Pterodactyls would pick up all the gay folks of color in one fell swoop and carry them to their fantasy vacation spot, all expenses paid for the rest of their lives, where the homophobes and bigots would become their servants, paid poorly and forced to sleep on the cold, hard floor. If discrimination became a thing of yesterday, all of the shoes that had been silent would find their voices and announce that they no longer wanted feet to tread in them. To kill the soul would be outlawed. All the guns would be melted down into trains so we could get out of our cars and tell our stories. Women everywhere would be the only ones to decide what happens to our bodies, and men would bleed monthly and bear children out of their stomachs. Frogs would get in on it too and disrupt all of the technology, so we'd have to go back to writing letters and meeting at the town square. while hummingbirds would realize it is time to come clean and reveal they are really the present and future Dalai Lamas combined. That if they fly close enough and look directly into our eyes, our minds would meld and we could become part hummingbird and part mystic too. This next poem I wrote during the pandemic. It's called Back to the Wild. In ferns and flowering oxalis beneath grandmother redwoods, I find the self unafraid of society breaking into unmanageable shards. Nettles and wild iris, purple as a bruise, sway in the breeze, singing in ancient tongues. Gracie says, I could live in the woods, happy and unencumbered, as we walk over bay and oak roots and miles of mycelium, a parachute threaded with our shared genetic bones. Sitting on redwood duff, sunlight reflects a perfect circular web, and I am unwilling to walk back, wanting to halt time like the red-shouldered hawk soaring above us, to become a new kind of stillness, a new kind of alive. And this poem is called The Life You Gave Me, which is the title poem of my collection, and it's dedicated to my grandfather. It could not fit in a velvet box with a velour ribbon tied twice, nor could it be worn, an evening gown blue as the generous, sad sea. Not a stone, not a car, not a dog with pleading eyes to please get the bone before it's gone forever. It wasn't green, it didn't sing, but started quiet as an egg splitting in the waters. Not chapped hands in winter, not webs behind the bed, not the pitch perfect way oaks whip in a storm. Listen to this gift burn. Air coming and going in a nostril, upper eyelid drooped and creased, a delicate gait. The way I open the door with my left, close it with my right. Footfall on tile. You watching me in my dreams, reaching your eyes out as if to say, take it, I don't need it where I'm going. Arms laden with white roses, one for each year you lost, one for each of mine. And the last poem I'll read is a poem in the voice of my mother. I took care of my elderly parents for many, many, many years, and I have a whole section of my book, poems in my mother's voice, and this is called Mishigas, which in Yiddish, for those of you who know, means crazy. Mishigas. I don't need anyone else. B shops, mops, does the laundry. We can take the shuttle to the podiatrist. If someone comes, they have to be over 40. I don't want anyone too young. What if they want my jewelry? Remember the girl with the jalopy? I do not want to drive around in a car I don't know. It might smell bad. You lost how much money a month? How could you give up your class? Oh, that was because of his stroke. See, it's all my husband's fault. Oh my God, that's a lot of money. Well, I know you can't just say give it back, but it was yours in the beginning and they should know that. Can you maybe say it was a mistake? You don't need to come 2 times a week. I'd love to see you, but we can manage without your help. All we do is watch TV, eat some cottage cheese with peaches, read a little, fall asleep. You keep telling me you're tired, so rest a little. Don't keep running around. Oh, by the way, I need to go to the eye doctor. Can you make an appointment and take me? Also, the vacuum cleaner finally is kaput. I'd like you to drive me to Sears so I can buy another one. Then I want you to pick up the mail. When I get my pension, you can deposit it and then write our rent check. You really ought to get more sleep. You got those dark circles under your eyes and you're putting on weight. A mother sees everything. You should get a job that pays better. like Diane's son. He's in construction. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was an awesome voice. Our last featured poet is Lynn Burnett, who will read, followed by Gary Grossman, Joyce Myers, and Jean Twaranite. Lynn Burnett's poems appear in many magazines and anthologies in the US and Canada, as well as in her chapbook Irresistible. A Best of the Net and Pushcart nominee, she won the Lauren K. Aline Difficult Fruit Poetry Prize and the Jack Grapes Poetry Prize. As the first place winner of Kelsay Books Women's Poetry Contest 2023, she is featured in the summer 2024 issue of the Orchards Poetry Journal, which I'm excited to announce was released today and looks like this. Recently retired, Lynn now lives on Vancouver Island.
Thank you, Jenna. And the 5 poems I'll be reading are from a future manuscript. And I'll start with the poem that brought me here. It's called From the Front Porch. Last night, the rhododendrons must have dreamed, for this morning lip-red flowers are opening, fixing their mouths upon the bee-stirred air. And the light that surely wakes for this, as I do, has so soaked the crew-cut grass that the blades seem to grow and bend brightly where my eyes rest, and rest they do there. The wind sweeps through the clipped corner hedge, indifferent to the scattered applause of leaves, bobbing the drowsy roses, sending little blossom shadows sailing over an emerald sea, going anywhere it wants, doing what it pleases, while the flirting ivy presses its ladder against the fence. Oh, the length such longing goes. Gone, 2 trees that coveted our sky for decades, and yet the one we left at driveway's end leans straight into tomorrow. A regal celebrant spilling its piñata of pine cones for a child's hands to pocket. Mine moves slowly through their new wealth of hours, wanting only to feel the solid warmth of yours. You are somewhere I am not looking. You are everywhere I look. Shine. Weeks of maybe before they sleep together. In his house, his bed. A clumsy affair, giving their bodies back forgotten parts until their mouths simply open to the salt lick of skin, tongues carving initials along spread limbs. Wherever it finds us, rapture's face nudges the deepest bulb to claim its sky. A mending here, the clotted heart on fire with beautiful, beautiful, not thinking of the intense heat and light it throws, the shadows sure to creep from dark caves, intent on apprehending it. She wakes to find him staring out the living room window. It's the first spring since his wife's ashes were scattered over the June-bright garden, and daffodils she'd planted nod across, trumpeting the sun and the hour. Touch his shoulder now and suffer the blade of a body stiffening, straightening, as if last night's shine had stuck a suddenly dangerous foot in the door. Summer Posy. A prescription. Take oxeye, Shasta, Paris, or Marguerite, all laid-back daisies, basking in the wattage of their own suns. Mix with common pink peonies, reaching for the moon, their huge, shaggy heads shrugging off the lunacies of human life. Let them speak from the wide mouth of a vase in a room you frequent. For beauty so cradled, happiness stalks. Ladies' night out. I sit down, unaware cancer has circled our table again. Tap someone else. Chemo snatched Brandy's hair, and now it's regrown. A storm-tossed sea where sweet vanities drown. She and I are the same age, a wicked flicker of the candle on the table between us, with every opening and closing of the pub door. Our group clinks glasses, her old self trickling back from its hard bench, the white-knuckled wait for a sick imposter to get up and go. 20 years we've leaned on each other, a six-pack. Our kids have just graduated, man boys, sure they can shoulder what's next. We talk about letting them go, pride sweating it out with the resident ache of emptying rooms, as we also are let go. We mean by them a mutual milestone. Later, I'll remember our voices low in the dark, the hum of an ancient river coursing seaward, how gently it rocks a boat with no oars. Lastly, Desolation Sound with an epigraph. So named by Captain George Vancouver in 1792 because, quote, there was not a single prospect that was pleasing to the eye. Part 1. The captain must have spent many days in a fog, for my eyes could not be more pleased. These lucid, calm waters at high tide mirror perfectly a landscape of rock and tree, it taking some effort of the eye to perceive water's edge. So have I moved fluidly through the rituals of my world, at times uncertain whose voice carried kindness to the table, ladling utter acceptance, and whose breaths later tempted tears, whose arms have folded, crossed, and kept away, whose with their compass of fingers craved skin on skin, whose body has stooped amid the garden plants to gather in the harvest, and whose has yielded cleanly to the pen, as now, when lines redrawn become a mucky hoarder's delight, the tide gone low. Part 2. Here on our boat in August, it's easy to fall in love with the light glancing off leaves and mossy stone, diamonding surface droplets before my half-closed eyes. Eagle cry, seal splash, water slap port side, all harbor a stilling. Not even the ripple of a thought cast by a needy mind, nor the shimmer of an image upon the vast screen of my life. This quiet tide, a fluid sum like mother's milk, takes me deep into the atomic swim of my parts, the blood hum and wind gallop of the creature I am, gives me anchor, soul kiss, bedrock, muting the voluble world, sloughing words tough as barnacles, cooling hands across a feverish forehead, softening the face of old thrown stones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And just for everyone else who's watching, you can find several of the other poems that she's read also in the Orchards, as well as an interview with her. Okay, now we are moving on to Gary Grossman.
Hi, are you giving any sort of introduction or no?
Because we are kind of running out of time, that is the introduction, but I will post everyone's bios in the description of the YouTube channel, as well as hopefully a link to everyone's book.
Okay, well, this is my book, which was published in March of last year by Kelsay. This is entitled Popping Shrimp Heads. 5 pounds of white shrimp, fresh off the Anna Jane. Tybee Island, Georgia, chitin-wrapped gifts from the cordgrass haven where Bull and Savannah rivers embrace to form the Atlantic Ocean. The shrimp are a satiny translucence, a string of soft marine opals, eyes now glassy, black beads peering up from our stainless steel sink. Each hand holds a shrimp as the green olive scents of Spartina and pregnant mud scuttle upwards. Grasping the bodies gently, I turn them, pleopod legs to the outside, avoiding polysaccharide lances that exact revenge for lost crustacean lives. But the sticks are inevitable, because this is bare-handed work, gloves unable to palpate the springy crevice between thorax and abdomen, where a thumb must enter, and with guillotine flick, separate the transparent rectangle of head, guts, and antennal whips from sensual tail meat. The head tumbles downward, joining the decapitations of other noble crustaceans laying on the sink's silver floor. Steam rises from Grandma's dented black stockpot. Scents of bay, mustard seed, coriander, and cayenne. The boiling water jitterbugs in anticipation. And this next poem is called Voice Lessons. How are they born? The universal truths of pitch, tone, resonance, texture. To sing like the small wind painting my lover's skin. Orange gold tones emerging like adult monarchs from chrysalises. We begin with vocalises, fantasy syllables to loosen tongue, palate, and sound box. Eyes closed, shoulders back, head centered, leaning slightly forward on the balls of my feet as if to make a free throw. Rectus and transversus abdominis are bellows, stoking my vocal forge. Piano chords ricochet off studio walls, painted reassuring green. The first vocalese, shoo papa shoo papa shoo papa shoo, hints at meaning, but instead just animates the pine siskins feeding outside the open studio window. The tempo becomes fierce, too fast, and eventually my lips descend into laughter. We have soared and stooped through 2 full octaves. More complex vocalises follow. Ni, na, na, no, each note 2 beats, and V, O, E, O, E, O, E. And again, I run 2 octaves each, perhaps 7 vocalises in my weekly lesson. Most sessions I vanish into the notes, nothing present but vibrating atoms speeding from my lungs. It is the cleanest I have ever felt. And one quick last poem, apropos for this year, entitled Cicadas Brood 10. 17 years is a long wait, though love cuts the years. The roots of wild asters were succulent in year 8, as were the water oaks in 12, and maple rootlets in year 15, ooh la la. Dark memories, the many tastes on my rostrum, sweet, sour, and the umami of daylily tubers. I was sitting on a poplar branch, timbals buzzing when you landed, eyes glowing like rubies from Ceylon, and such shapely legs, 3 pairs of jointed stilts, all intact, not a single one missing. Golden veined wings like a Tiffany window from January 1908. My heart pulsed in need, and your wings clicked yes, to say yes, as we coupled to make brood 11. Thank you.
I love how vivid those are, that I could see everything. Okay, and now we're going to hear from Joyce Myers. Did she drop out of the meeting? I think she may. Oh, no, I still see her. Joyce, are you there? Since we can't hear from Joyce just at this moment, we might switch the last two readers. So we'll hear from Jean first, and Joyce, if you need any help with anything, just let me know in the chat. So Jean Twarenite, do you want to read?
Thanks, Jenna. It's so great to be here with all the Kelsay Books family, and this is an especially memorable occasion for me because my fifth collection that I've published with Kelsay Books is about to be published this month, and I don't have a cover to show you because I'm on vacation and I'm going to go, and my print proof is waiting for me in the mailbox at home. But I would like to thank all the Karen and all the staff from Kelsay Books for making this such a rewarding experience for me. My new collection is called Death at the Mall. I think we're gonna see it after all. There it is. Thank you, Jenna. And when you live in Tucson and in June and July, it's over 110 degrees. Where do you go to get a walk in? Well, you go to the mall. So I've written many poems there, and I've become, unbeknownst to me, I've become a mall walker. So thank you, Jenna. These two poems are both from the collection. This first poem was inspired by a wonderful phrase by Marianne Moore in her poem Poetry. Imaginary gardens with real toads in them. To me, that's so evocative, and it's really, to me, that's what poetry is all about. Imaginary garden. As you enter, you see only disorder and confusion, devoid of any unity or meaning. But look closer, and you discover the faint outline of a theme previously hidden in the undergrowth. Though not one sign giving a plant's name, as if that could tell you what life is all about for a petunia or a boojum in this garden of beauty and grotesquerie, where orchid thoughts grow side by side with corpse flowers and creeping devil cacti, and the withered gray stems and stalks of the departed still rustle in the wind. Here a fern can fiddle, free to unfurl into a frond or find a wholly different shape to life. The sweet tart taste of an apple or the soft leathery touch of a sequoia can sustain you for a day. The wake robin's rotten flesh smell can teach you to extend your antennae and know the world like a fly. And the sight of a lone white violet blooming against a green mossy cushion in a dark wood can suddenly make you feel as if walking on sacred ground. If you sit quietly beside a small breeding pool, as birches, maples, and willows leaf out in spring, you might just glimpse a line of tiny imaginary toads emerging, waiting for someone to enter and conceive them so they can become real. And the next poem, this last poem, was actually first published in my second collection, Kelsay Books collection, The Museum of Unwearable Shoes. It was inspired by a showcase of shoes at the mall, of course. It was also inspired by this poem itself was inspired by a conversation my wife and I had a few years ago when we were filling out our living wills. Message in a body. When the radiance of your face leaves me blank, when my bowels evacuate as they please, when words have no meaning, You will know it is time that I go. But if your time comes first, I will remember your wish, unlike mine. From the way you study so curiously the stranger before you, from the way you struggle to say what your mind can no longer think, from the way you stare resolutely at the future as if to stab it with your will to hold a place for you still. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean, and we look forward to publishing your forthcoming collection soon. Looks like Joyce Myers was able to get back into the reading. Is your turn to read?
I'm so sorry. I lost my internet connection just a few minutes ago, and it's a long time to get it back, but here I am. So I have two books published by Kelsay. The first was published in 2017. It's The Way Back. I'm going to be reading from the second one called Twisted Threads, which just came out this month. So I will start with, if I can find it. I'm sorry, I had the page marked, but here it is. Okay, this poem is about an encounter during a walk along a lake near my home. In fear, wisps of cloud drift on the lake's surface, eyelashed in green reflections. The air drips with peace, scent of almost autumn. I sense them before I see them, twisted shapes rising from tall grass. Stilled by my footsteps on the path, they stand at attention. I still myself, tumbling into wonder. 4 pairs of antlers above 8 gazing eyes. I watch them watching me. They're wary, though I, unweaponed, a fraction of their size and strength, could easily be torn apart by antlers engineered and honed for combat. Yet it is they that fear, while I want only to hold this moment, to gaze in silence, in reverence, while the world about me rolls toward apocalypse. How to find the language to let them know I mean no harm, want nothing of them, but to drink their beauty, reach out of my solitude to love a living thing. To reassure them, I avert my eyes, walk on, hoping they will hear my silent message. Yet they flee, and tomorrow will again. The fear of what is strange, too deep to yield to reality or reason. Next, I'll read the title poem of the book. It's a kind of meditation on why things happen the way they do. Twisted Threads. It started with a bang, they say, and it had to be a big one. Since then, the double helix with my name on it has always been somewhere in bits and pieces of a star, an ocean soup, a leaf, weaving a twisted thread through space-time's web to the second my parents met and made me. At a Y in the creek, the waters meet, sinuate right, gather up the flow and rush headlong, doubled into the mainstream, gushing as if ready to waterfall, drowning out the hum of insects, distant traffic, lawnmowers, then level out to a shimmering susurration. A yellow swallowtail floats by against a background of beech leaves, kaleidoscoping to deep forest green, glittering emerald, sun-splashed lime. And though the path that led me here feels chosen, who can say the converging threads of me, the butterfly, each water drop, each leaf, twisting their way to meet just here, could have ever touched if any random ion somewhere, sometime, had taken a different turn. And I'll end with the last poem in the book. This poem is about the future. Reflections from the Ark in year 87. The failure was to forget to walk lightly on the earth, leaving only footprints. We had learned so much, even to conquer death, once we passed the primitive stage of merely repairing and replacing body parts. My generation was the first. I was 10 when my parents told me I would never die. We were having breakfast, the sky outside the window, a smoky yellow. Their words seemed unimportant. I already felt immortal. What did I know of death? Only that I could kill mosquitoes. And there were so many since the birds disappeared. And I once had a dog that died, but people were different, or so I thought. Then my grandparents died. Lines appeared in my parents' faces, bits of gray in their hair, and I came to understand how they were trapped by DNA, programmed to age and die. So it was too late for them. I left at 23, older than most of my companions. Only a few of us still remember trees. The others know them only from old paintings in museums, akin to angels, dragons, mythical gods. The planners and engineers thought of everything, equipped the Ark to sustain us, to replenish all that we consume. We can journey for millennia. The old books teach that paradise awaits. We have only to find it. And so we spin around the galaxies in search of a new home. No rush. We have all the time in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. That was a beautiful one to end on. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who read today. Thank you to everyone who attended. It's always a pleasure to get to work with or to hear your poetry. All the books that were shown today are available or forthcoming at kelsaybooks.com and Amazon, including the Orchards Poetry Journal, which I mentioned the latest issue was released today. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
And thank you.